I'm Alex Pugh. I'm reporting for FinTech Futures at Sibos 2022. I'm with Dan Globerson. He's head of the Bank of APIs at NatWest. Hi, Dan.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's going great. Pleasure to be here.
So open banking has unleashed a wave of innovation in FinTech, and APIs have been instrumental to that. What role will APIs play in the nascent open finance landscape?
I think, Alex, a good question. Here in the United Kingdom, I think that we've created a very API-centric ecosystem. We started with our 9 largest banks, effectively delivering open banking about 18 months ahead of the rest of Europe and the UK. And we decided early on that we were going to collaborate in an API ecosystem, a way to ensure security and standardization. And I think that that's now taken hold, and those standards are now being rolled out across the United Kingdom. So it's APIs or nothing in our space. And I think that open finance, smart data, and beyond are all going to be very API-centric for those same reasons.
Yeah. NatWest is obviously a huge player in the financial services ecosystem in the UK. How does the bank facilitate the use, development, and the rollout of APIs in the UK's fintech sector?
Yeah, it's a few things. There's standards, and we can talk about that a little bit, as well as I think being progressive and leaning into the opportunity as opposed to watching it. And so from those perspectives, the standards are a big thing. We worked with 8 other banks in the UK, a few of our regulators, consumer advocates, fintech industry, to create the original UK open banking standards. And I think that creates a foundation of which it's much easier to move forward. We have security standards and data standards and all the rest. And so I think with that foundation in place, it makes it that much easier to engage fintechs, third parties as we call them, TPPs, talking about what else can we do with this ecosystem. And we've got a few good examples in there. We've worked proactively with other banks and with the fintech community on things like extended customer attributes, so that beyond the regulated ecosystem, customers can consent for us to share some of their personal details, which might make it easier for them to onboard into the digital economy, into e-commerce, and reduces KYC costs and risks, etc.
Great. So APIs, we touched on the sharing of data there. They allow the sharing of financial data, and financial data is probably some of the most personal data out there. How do you ensure that an individual's data is secure and only shared with the right parties when it's being shared?
Again, another great question. I think when it comes to security and sharing, that was part of our original design. So from the get-go of open banking and that collaboration we talked about, the tenets of that are: how do we ensure that customers are consenting to sharing data or initiating a payment? And how do we ensure that all of the actors, third parties, the banks themselves, are all aware of who's sharing what with whom, and that's clear. And so we created customer experience guidelines and the like that provide reasonably consistent journeys across the banks. And so that means that customers always consent. They consent to particular types of data being shared for a known period of time for a particular use. I think that's a good basis. Sitting behind that, we've decided to inherit global standards for security and the like. So we didn't invent something where there was already a great solution out there. From that point, I think you kind of go back to the tenets of all of us need to be aware of who we're sharing data with. So we can be part of an ecosystem where customers consent. It's clear what data is moving and for what purpose. As it moves around, I mean, data breaches are unfortunately a fact of life. And I think that's still something that consumers, including ourselves, have to think about when we're sharing data is, am I happy for my data to be stored somewhere?
Yeah.
And that's just a decision we all make.
A risk-benefit analysis, and at least people know what they're signing up for if it's transparent about where their data is going to be shared.
Exactly. And back to your point, Alex, around financial data being some of our most personal data, I think that's true. But I think as we move from open banking to open finance, still the tip of an iceberg, and into smart data, our UK name, our regulatory agenda around open everything, I think we start talking about even more personal data. I mean, our banking data is very personal. I think our search history is probably quite personal as well, or our shopping baskets with online e-commerce
Medical
are probably.
Yeah.
So I think that I think we've created something that's a great example, but I don't think the personalization reduces over time. Actually, I think it's going to be just as much personal data, if not more.
Yeah. So you're working with, we talked a little bit about standards, you're working with industry partners to establish standards. What's that process like? Who are you working with? What standards are you setting up?
Yeah, when it comes to standards, I mean, we started out in an interesting place. As you'll recall, some years ago, there was the advent of PSD2, Payment Services Directive 2, which had one of its components was banks have to allow customers to share their data with others or allow customers to permit others to initiate payments on their behalf. That was the open banking piece of it. In the United Kingdom, part of Europe at the time, pre-Brexit, we effectively inherited that as part of our payment services regulation. But our Competition and Markets Authority was actually, I think, very forward-looking and thought, okay, we want to do this sooner for the 9 biggest banks. We want to do this sooner than the rest of the UK and the rest of Europe by 18 months, as we discussed. And we want to make sure that this thing has every chance of success. And so API only, not sharing passwords with people or screen scraping. You'll be familiar with some of these legacy methods. So APIs only, make sure that the standards, make sure they're agreed. And to be honest with you, with that kind of drive, it made that the process we talked about just a little bit earlier with the consumer advocates, with FinTech industry, with the banks and with the regulators a bit easier. We actually created technical working groups. And they looked around, what could we inherit in terms of global data standards, global security standards and the like, and we worked through it. And that process actually worked reasonably well, and I anticipate it has every chance to continue working well in open finance and beyond.
Have you got ideas about how to future-proof those standards? Because obviously things may evolve over time. Are there things that you have in mind that you want to make sure that you are able to work with?
You know, we've already taken part in the evolution of the standards. We've taken part, particularly the data standards, as we've added extended customer attributes, or as we're looking at payments and thinking about how can we add what we might call fourth-party information. So we're already evolving those, and it works reasonably well. I can't say that we found any challenge with how we'd evolve the standards. I suppose there's always going to be those groups who say, hey, maybe you don't need standards. The standards might evolve over time, but seeing that we were part of creating this, I think we've become really big fans of it.
Cool. NatWest develops and deploys a number of its own APIs. How important is it to be in the loop when it comes to innovation across the wider financial services and FinTech industry? Where do you get your inspiration from?
Inspiration, it comes from a lot of places, but yes. We've decided when it came to open banking, we made a decision early on that this was an amazing opportunity for us to move forward in the world of API enablement, which effectively is just externalizing our banking services so that those services can be reorchestrated in a variety of places that don't even have to be our own channels. They can be embedded finance, they can be directly with our corporate customers in a lot of places. And so with that in mind, we started off with an inspiration of what is a digital economy, what does an API connected economy look like? How quickly will that emerge? Well, the pandemic did have one interesting benefit in that we've accelerated adoption of a digital economy.
Every cloud.
Yeah, exactly. But in terms of inspiration, we tend to look beyond finance. So of course we look across finance, we look at different countries. Now, the UK was an early adopter of open banking, so there weren't a lot of places to look for that. A lot of places were looking at us, but we still understood what the intentions of others were. But we looked in different places. We looked at the interconnections of maps with physical devices, training watches, with social channels. We looked very broadly about, in that digital economy, how can one remain relevant? How can one help customers succeed? Not just the bank itself, but our customers succeed. And the inspiration comes far and wide.
Great. That's it from us. Thank you. Cheers, Dan.
Pleasure.
Fantastic. Thank you.